Hey everybody, it's Cider Week Hudson Valley. It's our last Saturday night of this amazing virtual week. I'm Scott Ramsey from the New York Cider Association, and I'm really excited to have Carl Duhoffman with me here from Orchard Hill Cider Mill. Hey Carl.
How's it going?
Really good, really good. We've had just a phenomenal week of all kinds of really interesting programming, as you know, and as you've been a part of, which has been really exciting. And everything can be seen over at our YouTube channel at New York Cider Association TV. So that's really cool. So if you missed anything beforehand, you can go back and watch some of the programming that we've already had. But I'm really looking forward to this because we're doing a chef and cider pairing here, and we have Chef Alex Raij from the city. Tell me a little bit about her before we watch the cooking video.
I met Alex when we did the Spain exchange, where all the Hudson Valley, the New York cider makers went to Spain, and we visited and met with Spanish cider makers in Asturias and the Basque region. And it was a fantastic trip. And Alex, who with her husband Eder Montero, own 3 fantastic restaurants in New York City, 2 of which are focused very much on a Basque style of cuisine. And one of the things that I learned on this trip is that in San Sebastian, outside San Sebastian, there is a culinary institute that basically trains chefs all over the world in Spanish cuisines. And it would be the equivalent of the Culinary Institute or, the Cordon Bleu in France. And the influence that this cuisine has all over the world in Spanish-speaking regions is on a par with any cooking school in the world. And the Basque cuisine is just such a highly refined and amazing tradition, which my time there was just the scratch the surface of. But Alex is an acknowledged master of this cuisine, and her restaurants with Eder run the gamut from really highly refined and like to casual, but the food is super refined, and so you can fall in and have that kind of casual Basque Pincho experience, but the food is just stupendous. And and Alex, when we were on this trip, was a great guide because we were all there. For us, many of us, some of us knew a lot about Spanish food, some of us knew very little, but she spoke the language and she could really be, she was a great resource to us. And we became, good friends. She's just a very generous person. And I think when you're a chef in the hospitality industry, having that core of generosity as a person is it goes from you in a straight line to the table, and it makes great sense.
You really can sense it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's Alex. She's fantastic, and her food was wonderful. And I got her book when I was at
nice.
Quinto, and I've made a number of recipes, and she's even generous. Like I'll text her. I'll be like, Alex, I'm doing this recipe.
You have like the bat line. You have like the emergency hotline.
Like, Carl, you idiot. Well, but she always answers, and she always will give me, great, that thing to make it work. So
yeah, that's
she
fantastic.
really is fabulous. And during the COVID crisis, to have 3 restaurants, she's under tremendous strain and tremendous all kinds of things, but she took the time to make this video, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, normally we'd be in person in these really beautiful restaurant spaces during Cider Week and celebrating the chef and cider pairings, but we're being creative and going virtual. So without further ado, we have this really awesome video of Chef Alex cooking in her kitchen this amazing meal. So let's watch, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the cider pairings and get your perspective on that.
Enjoy.
Let me just pull up there we go.
Make sure the volume's on.
Exactly. All right, there we go.
Hi, my name is Alex Raij. I'm the co-chef, co-owner of Txikito in West Chelsea, a Basque restaurant that celebrates cider every day. It's New York Cider Week, and we're gonna make some Basque-inspired dishes for you. I'm gonna start with this beautiful rainbow chard, which is from New York. And I have some cilantro macho. This is not a typical Basque ingredient, but we love the fresh flavor of cilantro juxtaposed against the sort of austere, very like straightforward flavors of Basque cooking. I've got some local tomatoes. These are greenhouse tomatoes yet. They were started in greenhouse anyways, and then they get a lot of natural sun every day. But we're still about 3 or 4 weeks away from like the regular outdoor tomato. No matter, sometimes I say this in our book, the Basque book, sometimes the best tomato salad you ever had has more to do with how you treat the onion than the tomato itself. We're gonna make a tortilla because that's very typical in the cider houses of the Basque country. In this case, the tortilla is gonna be a little bit lighter. Typically a tortilla is made with potatoes, and onions and a large amount of olive oil. In this case, because we have this beautiful chard, we're going to make the tortilla from acelgas, or from Swiss chard. These chard stems are really crisp, and so I'm going to go ahead and take out the veins and then wilt down the stems and the leaves separately. Whenever you make a tortilla, you definitely have to make it from cooked ingredients so that the tortilla doesn't become all waterlogged. So we're going to have the tortilla, the tomato salad, and then finally we're going to have some local squid. Squid is one of my favorite ingredients. It's a very typical Basque ingredient. It goes great with cider, and it's also an amazing New York ingredient. I think some of the best squid I've ever had in my life is from New York, and we buy some of the finest squid that we can get our hands on. So all of this stuff is actually available at the Union Square or Brooklyn farmers markets. You just have to pick the right day to find the fish purveyors, but otherwise there's nothing here that you can't find. Obviously fresh eggs, sun gold tomatoes, white onion, the cilantro macho. This could be anything. Typically the Basque country would be actually parsley, if anything at all. Swiss chard, tomatoes, onions, and then I'm going to get a little bit of really high quality tuna as well to put on top of the tomato salad. So we're going to get started. I have a small grill pan or grill situation heating. You can do this on your outdoor grill, or you can do it in a pan. And it's actually great to go ahead and thread these on skewers. You can cut them loose later. It's not like that you have to eat them on a skewer, but it sure does make it easy to turn the squid so you can get some nice color on it. The other thing you want to make sure is that squid's a very wet ingredient. So I've got this sitting on a paper towel just to get it a little drier. And then I'll remove the paper towel and add some olive oil to get a little conductivity going. So these are, I double threaded them. If you use 2 skewers, that just makes it not spin around on end. It's just a little trick that we do at the restaurant. So to clean the chard stems, I like to just cut down, and since these are going to get wilted down, they don't need to look pretty. They're never going to look prettier than they did when we first bought them. Obviously, the smaller they are, the more tender. So if you want to make it like some kind of like chard salad or something, definitely buy the smaller leaves. But chard likes to be cooked. You can also turn it on its side and fold it and then just do this. And that's a really nice, easy way to deal with that vein. So once you've got the ribs out of the Swiss chard, you just want to gather it up. This has just been washed, and it's actually great for it to be wet. Because it will help it steam and saute at the same time. And I just want this in kind of like big ribbons. I don't want it too thin because I don't want it to sort of wilt into nothing. Not because this isn't a lot of chard, because it is, and we might not use it all. But because we want some structure to the tortilla, like the way that when you're making a tortilla, the way that the vegetables sort of interlock within the egg is part of the art of making the tortilla. So it has volume, and when you cut it, it doesn't all fall apart. So you can go ahead and wilt this down in batches, but I have a big pot, so I'm going to just wilt it down all at once. And I'm going to use olive oil. And chard is great with garlic, but I like a little bit of onion in my tortillas for sweetness. Even when I'm making them out of potato, like the traditional potato. So I'm just waiting for this oil to heat up, but I actually don't want any color on this because I think caramelizing the onions makes it like super rich and not the ideal flavor. So I'm really just waiting for that to warm up a little, and I'm gonna put them in there. It's not a ton of onion, it's a back flavor. Definitely salt your onion because that'll make all the juices weep out and help them break down faster. That's true of all the vegetables. So just get that going. And again, I cut these kind of in long skinnies because to the extent that they're contributing any kind of vegetable quality to the tortilla, they're also going to contribute a little bit of structure as well. If your onions are going a little slow at the beginning and you're afraid they're going to burn, you can cover them. But the salt usually does the trick of pulling out the juices and helping them wilt faster. So we'll give those a head start and then we'll throw in the chard. And then as soon as I get these that's going well, you can hear it, you can smell it, and you can see it. When they're about halfway translucent, which this small amount of onion and this sort of copious amount of oil, and yes, that's intentional, to use a lot of olive oil. If you don't like to use a lot of olive oil, probably don't make a tortilla. And now I'm just going to turn it down a touch because I just don't want my fire alarm to go off in my apartment. And I'm just going to throw these in by the handful. Put them in oil. And throw another pinch of salt in there. Just remember that these are going to cook down a lot. So while you want to be generous with the salt for flavor, you don't want to over salt them because they're going to break down a good amount. And I usually actually let them, you can see how they're kind of breaking down already. I usually let the first amount break down. It's just kind of a trick. If you cook down some and then cook down sort of the second handful or the second batch, once the first batch is cooked down, then what you end up with is much greener, sort of more verdant vegetable because they don't get all overcooked, like they're actually sort of cooking in the other juices. So we'll use 6 eggs in this one. Depends on how sort of thick you want it. Another pinch of salt in here. The chard's been pre-cooked with some of the stems, not all of them, just because I think I have too much. And I actually probably need a bigger bowl. You can beat up the eggs, and I'm actually going to put these. I think they're easier to beat in a smaller bowl, but I'm going to put them in a bigger bowl because you always want to add whatever the garnish is to the tortilla or the flavor of the tortilla, whether it's the potato or the Swiss chard or whatever it is. You want to add that hot because what that does is it tempers the eggs and it makes it enrobe the vegetable better, and then you have a better structure with your tortilla. So I'm now taking hot, I'm going to take hot Swiss chard and I'm going to add it to my room temperature whisked eggs. And this is going to temper the eggs as you would for ice cream or any kind of egg sauce like hollandaise or whatever. It's serving the same purpose. And as I'm scooping this out, I'm leaving those delicious Swiss chard juices behind. That's okay. If you went ahead and sauteed those stems, which I'm going to do later, you can saute them off in a pan and then throw them into those juices. You can put that on pasta or whatever. Preheated a good amount of olive oil. You don't want to deep fry it, but you do want to add that in. I'm holding back just one little bit of it because I want the egg on the inside to cook. So I need part of it to scramble within the tortilla, kind of like when you're making an omelet. You have to just know when to stop. This is the last of it. People always ask me, is the tortilla made on high heat or low heat? And I always say both. So once you start working on the structure of the tortilla, you want to turn it down once it sets up. And this is the time when I like to start to pull in the sides of the tortilla. I didn't mention it, but I do like a non-stick pan for this. If you have a really good, very well seasoned enamel or cast iron pan that you love and you believe in, go for it. But I especially think that unless you're fairly well practiced, you should probably use a non-stick pan at least until you know what you're doing. All right, wish me luck. I usually do this with a metal thing at work. I don't make a ton of tortillas at home. We'll try to flip this nice for you. Typically you want the kind of plate that sits right inside the pan, but of course I don't have that size. Choke up on your pan and have no fear, just flip. And then I do like to add just a touch of oil before sliding it back in. And you can see that all that chard didn't, you need a lot because it does cook down. Again, I'm reshaping it on pulling in the corners and tucking them in, like just willing it. And then I like to press it down too, because that way the edges get this kind of like curved top. And to make sure that it's not sticking, which you can see that it's not. And then I usually like to flip it once or twice more. So I'm going to flip it again because you actually want your tortillas to be kind of pale, not like too dark. I don't like them color free, which is, like this is what people think is like the ideal color for a tortilla. I actually like them to have a little bit of a golden color. That's just a personal preference. So while the tortilla is cooking, we're going to go ahead and grill the squid. Again, just very simple salt and olive oil. And instead of parsley, I'm going to use this the same cilantro. And a squeeze of lime juice, but this could easily be vinegar. And one of the things that I love, about cider is that you can use vinegars really freely with it, whereas wine is often compromised by by vinegar. With cider, you don't have to like have that concern. So I'm just going to squeeze this over afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead. There's something really delicious about grilled squid, in my opinion, and it's going to go great with the rest of these flavors. So you want to oil the protein, but you don't want it dripping off of there because you don't want to create any flare-ups because that actually will give you that kind of torch taste that doesn't taste good. And if you do get the flare-ups, then you just want to move squid around. I'm not sure that this is hot. Yeah, it is. Okay, great. So I'm actually going to sort of make sure that it won't stick. And if you're doing this on an outdoor grill, you probably want to soak the skewers just so they don't catch on fire. Maybe even on an indoor grill, we'll see. That's what I was afraid of. Just don't want the fire alarm to go on. The tortilla is done, delicious golden brown, ready to go. You want to let this sit for a while. The other nice thing about this menu is it's 100% edible at room temperature, which is great when everything's sort of at the height of flavor. So let this sit, let the flavors gel. You can make it in the morning and let it sit on your table until the afternoon, and it'll only be better for it. And you don't have to reheat it. These are typically eaten room temperature. I'm not that big a fan of reheated tortilla. Now, for the tomato salad, super simple. I like red onion just because it's pretty, but you can take whatever onion you like. If you have like Vidalia or like something really sweet, use that. Just slice it thin, but not paper thin. You want to have a little bit of a bite. And what I like to do is make kind of like a little vinaigrette out of cherry tomatoes and onion. And then pour that over the larger tomatoes. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. So when these are sun golds, they're obviously like such a sweet variety, and they're nice because some of them are like the size of a marble and some are a little bigger. So what I usually do is have half of them and leave half of them whole, just to have like a variety of textures. And also because I usually like to marinate these a little bit ahead of time, some of them will break down and turn into like a sweet vinaigrette, and then the other ones will stay whole and have that sweet burst of flavor. So once you get the ones you want cut in half, I'm kind of just grabbing the bigger ones. Adding a pinch of salt to the tomatoes, and then I'm going to scatter the onions on top, making sure to sort of break them up so that they're going to be in contact with the oil and the vinegar. I'm going to add another pinch of salt on top of that. And if you like pepper, you can, but again, it's not really so typical in the Basque Country. They're really not huge fans of covering up flavors or sort of changing the natural flavor of foods. So that just can sit there for a minute. And again, that salt is going to start working on the onion and start breaking it down. And you can even dress them right away. You know, sometimes people say, you don't dress a salad till last minute. I actually really like to dress it When it comes to vinegar, when it comes to oil, it must be olive oil and it should be Arbequina, in my opinion. Not that there aren't other good ones, but that is, to me, the most superior. For vinegar, you can use whatever you want. I happen to have some Hudson Valley ramp vinegar. So I'm going to, and all this is sugar, water, salt, and vinegar, and then the bulbs of the ramps, which gives it like that beautiful sort of semi-sweet garlicky flavor. And again, just give this a quick stir. Let those flavors come together. Maybe 10 minutes. It could even be half an hour before, honestly. And then go ahead and cut your tomatoes. These have some kind of leathery skins, but they'll be great. In the Basque country, a lot of times they'll peel their tomatoes. I'm always so charmed by that because they don't love those thick skins. Americans like the tartness. So now I'm just going to season these again with a little bit of salt. And then this is their dressing. So I'm just going to pour this right over. This is, again, olive oil, red onion, little sun golds, and the ramp vinegar. Okay. So I think our squid is done also. Go ahead and put it on a plate. And so the squid, you want to serve it kind of medium. It kind of, grilling is kind of ideal for squid because the edges get kind of like burnt and crunchy, and then the inside between like there will be like nice and medium, sort of medium rare. And you don't need to worry too much. I mean, a lot of people don't like to eat raw squid. I absolutely love it, but you don't need to worry about it too much. But while those last ones are cooking, I'm just going to dress this really quick with a little bit of lime juice and olive oil. And I'll pull the other ones off when they're ready. And then same here. You don't need to chop up these herbs. You can just, it's almost like dill. This cilantro macho is just like, I guess, the male version of the cilantro. Happy Cider Week. Enjoy the week. Enjoy your cider.
It's delicious.
That's awesome. So good, right?
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like riveted.
I know, and it's a little painful not to actually have that meal to sit down to, I have to say. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to be doing this virtually, but
I've had her tortilla before. We had an event at Orchard Hill and she provided the tortilla, and it was just, they were amazing. They were more the tortilla with the potatoes and onions, the traditional. And I was looking at the technique, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, just flip it," Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that she makes it seem so easy, which I think is the sign of any great creator, is that when you think you can do it because they make it look so easy, like that's when they're doing a really good job, because if you try to do it yourself, it's like impossible,
Well, the tortilla, I've done them at home, and they're not impossible, but I don't make it as good as that.
Right. Of course.
It's much more challenging. But
so tell me more about sort of your choice and your pairings with like the tortilla, for example, like the putting your bone dry with the tortilla.
Well, the way that I was taught to think about pairings is to think about texture, think about flavor as it is, the combination of the flavor that's there in the tortilla and the combination of the flavor that's in the cider, but then think about what happens when you mix them together, because it changes things. And so sometimes you're thinking of it like a sauce. Sometimes you're thinking of it like something that you dip. Sometimes you're thinking of it that's something that cleans your palate between bites. With the bone dry is very delicate. It's got good acidity. the custard quality of the eggs, the herbal quality of the chard. You know, there's an alchemy, I hope, that will pull things together.
Mm-hmm.
It also is about cleaning the palate between hands of the proteins and the fats of the eggs. So you take the bite, you refresh your palate. So the next time you bite it, the eggs, you get a clean, you know, revisited situation, basically.
Yeah.
So that's it's as much about cleaning the palate in between those bites as it is about what happens when they come together. You know, the acid of the bone dry helps break down the proteins. It also helps get your mouth primed. It's the beginning of the meal, so you start drinking before you even bite, and the acid gets the juices in the side of your mouth watering, so you're all ready to eat. So it's like that. It's a great aperitif cider.
Yeah,
and then it effortlessly blends into when you start eating the eggs as well.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that that I've been all of a sudden, I just feel like I'm seeing more and more like this use of salt, which I've never really thought about before in my own sort of naivety of, you know, understanding cooking and things, but just this really amazing use of salt, and quite liberally, you know, to really break things down or season or, you know, really work with the flavors. And so you know, you see that in her work, which,
yeah, the salt, obviously she was talking about how it breaks down the chard, but it also, you know, it amplifies the flavors.
Yeah.
And just like fat carries the flavors, and then salt amplifies the flavors. So you have the oil to carry and knit together all the flavors, and the salt, you know, basically it's like, if you leave the salt out, it's like watching a movie, you know, in not HD, you know.
Exactly.
You know, and
it's a really good way to put it.
All of a sudden you get the HD, you get the full color, you get the full sound, and you're like, what was I missing all these years? I didn't know this exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, you know, the tortilla is just, it's a masterful work of art, but it's a very humble thing, you know. People eat it, you know, it's room temperature. You don't eat it hot. It's something that when you show up at the Basque cider houses, it's there, it's on the counter, and you just get a slice, and it's alchemical. It's just simple ingredients all come together in a beautiful way, you know. And I think Alex, you know, in the center of her tortilla, if I remember, it's a little custardy. It's not entirely like rock hard. It's just the texture, you know, and that's part of the pairing as well, because that texture of that custardy, soft like texture, then with the austerity of this bone dry, you know, acid driven cider, you know, it's contrast.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah. Amazing. I want to remind our viewers that if you have any questions or comments, you can absolutely put those into the chat section, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll see those, so we can actually respond if you have any thoughts or questions.
And our ciders are not meant to be like Spanish style in any way, but the bone dry with that bright acidity, you know, it plays with that in that realm. So that's why.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, so let's talk about the tomato salad, which, oh my God, like how ridiculously delicious and just tangy and like flavorful does that look? And so
ramp used vinegar and
just, you know, all the
I'm an addict. And when the tomato season hits, it's like I eat tomatoes for breakfast, tomatoes for lunch. I eat tomatoes all the time. And so yeah, looking at that really got me primed for the tomato season, which is just around the corner. So I'm super
and I loved
excited.
what she was. I know, me too. And I loved what she was saying about, you know, sometimes it's not the tomatoes, it's the onion with the tomato, you know, that like makes the difference in the tomato, like which I think is really interesting.
Without a doubt.
So tell me about your choice to pair the Verde, which is what I'm drinking right now, by the way.
Awesome. The Verde is, you know, has a little more sweetness. It's a little more lush than the bone dry. So it's more in balance in that way, but it's still very acid driven. And so it's I would say it's kind of, to me, like she was squeezing the citrus on it. She was squeezing that. The cider is doing the same thing. It's bringing that zesty acidity to the table. It's giving some of the same flavors that are on the plate. You know, she's got the vinegar, which is acid, so the cider is very acid, so it's the same kind of dressing. And then the tomatoes themselves and the onions are sweet, and the cider has that sweet. So to me, it's more, this is, instead of a contrast pairing like the first, this is more about amplifying. It's more of a muchness. It's the acids are there, the sugars are there on the plate, and then they're there in the glass, and so it's harmoniously coming together and you know, working seamlessly together. So it's just, you know, straight through. It's that kind of a pairing. So
do you ever, I mean, I could almost see incorporating this into the dressing of some sort, you know what I mean? Like almost, I don't know. I mean,
the flavors are very similar, but there's a theme and variation, because then they bring apple, you know, and people pomodoro, which is what they say the name of Italian for tomatoes, is the golden apple. So it's
oh, interesting.
It's a natural pairing to think of tomatoes and apples, because of the acid and the sweetness, and you know, I think it goes together. They're you know, not related, but they hit our palates in much the same way. Obviously, just so much more water in the tomatoes, whereas the apples are just much more crunchier. So by the cider itself, you're getting much more of a watery expression of the apple. Yeah,
absolutely. It makes so much sense. And so then let's talk about that squid. Wow.
Oh yeah, that looks good.
And you know, the crazy thing is, you know, she didn't really even do anything to it. It was just that delicious squid by itself. And you imagine
lime, olive oil.
Yeah, just right there. And you imagine with those other flavors, like that's exactly what should happen.
Without
and the texture, everything I can imagine.
There's what happens with the heat. You know, with that caramelization, just kind of the crispness and the textural contrast. But then, you know, when you heat something up like that, it changes the character.
Yeah.
But for the pairing for that, it's straight up a sauce. She squeezed the limes on top of them, and the Northern Spy is very zesty. It's almost kind of grapefruity, grapefruit pith. Juicy acid, and so it's the same thing she's doing on top of the squid by squeezing a lime. You're doing by popping the cider in your mouth. It's like putting grapefruit and citrusy goodness on the squid in your mouth. You know, the flavors are coming together. You know, and you know, there's a reason that people put lemon and lime and, you know, on top of all these proteins, because it brightens things up. It pulls the fats and the proteins together. It's phenomenal. Yeah. So that's why we like a cider with good acidity to go with your food, because it works. Yeah. You know, priming your mouth, like we said, getting your digestive juices going, and just amplifying the flavors.
Yeah. So, amazing.
It's you know, as soon as we talked about having these dinners, these virtual dinners, I was like, it'd be so great, because these cider house dinners in the Basque region and Asturias were so just elemental and just delicious, simple, and you know, that meal she put together could be put together, I think, by anyone, and it might not be. It might not be as skilled at first, but
aesthetically, like perfect.
one time I flipped the tortilla and I missed it, and went all over the place. Then I just threw it all back in the pan, and it came back together, and it was fine. So even with the clumsiness and incompetence, it came together and it worked beautifully. So but great tips. And as I said, look, she cooked that meal. I feel like she cooked it for me at home. I mean, thank you. Alex. Thank you.
I know. I cannot thank her enough for participating in this. It's just been like so special, and it just looks amazing, and truly, you know, inspires me to make me want to go and make that dish. Like looks amazing.
Fantastic, without a doubt. So
awesome, cool. So Carl, you know, we're coming to the end of Cider Week Hudson Valley. I can't believe it's winding up. We just have one more day.
You know, but I think it's fantastic. I went back to watch some of the YouTubes, and you know, I watched half of one, and then I got called away, and I came back and it remembered where I was. I just picked up and finished watching it. So I've been slowly chipping away at the ones I wasn't able to watch, and there's a lot of great content. There's a lot of great cider makers and a lot of great chefs and people talking about, you know, what they do, and it's really rich content that's going to be available online on an ongoing basis. I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there right on our YouTube channel, and I'm very excited about that. I mean, to be able to have that representation of all this really amazing, you know, cider in the Hudson Valley is just really an awesome thing. And we still have, you know, tomorrow we have we're having a conversation with the ciderologist Gabe Cook from the UK. It's gonna, I know, right? I'm really excited about that. He's gonna chat with Ryan Burke over at Angry Orchard. They're good friends, and they have some history. So I'm hoping that'll be a little rambunctious.
I would expect nothing less of a Brit in Ryan.
Right. Exactly.
There'll be some comments, I think.
Yeah,
totally. You know, he's a ciderologist, and you know, when I was down in DC visiting the Ancho cidery, they were like, "Oh, you're friends with Mr. Cider." I mean, Cider. You know, Ryan, Mr. Cider.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
I would expect some more of that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love it.
Sorry, Ryan. I didn't mean to tell the story and hurt your feelings or anything.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. I don't think you like being called that. I don't think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's meant with full respect, I'm sure.
You know, I think the friendly, you know, as they say in Scotland, a little bit of a wind up. You know, you wind your friends up a little bit. You know, the pressure points, and you touch them and you wind them up. So
yes, absolutely.
But, yeah.
And then
I gotta make this dinner. I gotta cook.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely cook it at the Orchard. It seems like I could do it like that. It's perfect.
I know, right? Absolutely. Well, this has been really awesome, and I want to encourage anybody, you know, to get themselves out to your amazing tasting room and to Orchard Hill there on Soon's Farm, because it's just such a lovely space, and really delicious cider. Not for nothing, but it's worth the trip.
Starting next week, I think we'll even be allowed to have some indoor seating.
Ah, great, excellent
capacity. So
very nice. Yeah, 50% is better than 0.
It is. Yep.
And you do have some outdoor space there too. Have you set up some outdoor seating?
The outdoor seating's been going, so people have been coming and sitting on the patio, and we got our tent roof up, so we can sit in the garden. Yeah, it's a very comfortable, inviting place to visit, and you can drink some good cider. And what else do you need?
Yeah, it's perfect. Sounds amazing. Well, Carl, thank you so much. This has been really awesome. Thanks for coordinating with Chef Raij. And you know, this video will continue to exist on YouTube. So if you want to make the meal, you can go out, get the ingredients, which are listed right in the description, and then come back and make the meal and watch the video again, and enjoy with delicious cider.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Take it easy.
Yeah, you as well. Take care.
Bye.